Hey everyone, Eggman here with another video, and today we're going to look at some GD02 meta deck lists from the Japanese meta of the Gundam card game, mostly from their Hiroshima qualifier from this past weekend, as well as their new type challenges who started this week as well. So honestly, in North America, there's not that many events, at least larger events. I think the webcam event that we held last week might be the largest North American event for a while, but there will be one of our regionals in Florida at the beginning of December that was found out to get they found another venue, so that's going to work out for them. And obviously, we do have like our finals in February too, but in right now, like Japan's just been playing a lot more of this, and they have their own separate meta. So I think it's going to be fun to look at. We're going to look at some deck lists, and we're going to jump on into it. But before we do, if you guys are new to the channel, please make sure hit that like and subscribe. We make a lot of content for the Gundam card game, and I don't want you guys to miss it. Also, if you guys want any of the deck lists that we went over today, you can find them on my website, Eggman Events, linked in the description. We have this Hiroshima qualifier, which we have some deck lists for this. Also, I've been scrounging social media for finding some, deck lists for the new type challenges that they've had as well. So make sure to check that out. And also, big shouts to Adrien from Haven for helping me get this kind of deck list table figured out and just imported. And it would not be, there wouldn't be nearly as many deck lists without him. So I do appreciate it. So check that out if you haven't already, and let's just jump on into it. So we're going to look at a bunch of deck lists. We're just going to quickly go over the Hiroshima qualifier. So this is a larger event for Japan that happened. It happened November 3rd. There were 7 rounds of Swiss best of 1 into a top 16 cut with 2 pods of 8. So they kind of do it a little bit differently in Japan, where they do kind of have these separate pods. You don't need like one ultimate winner most of the time. They just kind of need like the qualifying points. There are some like additional prizings and stuff, but they're not necessarily like the same as what we're used to in North America, where we have like, full Swiss until there's one undefeated and then a top cut from there. If there is a top cut, they kind of do like more of a, separate top cut where they get like all the undefeateds and maybe some lucky X1s, and they get a top cut from that one. So it's a little bit more condensed for it. But for this big event, they did release not only the top 16 for the color breakdown, but also just the total color breakdown for the entire event. So for the top 16, they did have 7 copies of green white, 5 copies of blue green, and then single copies of blue red, blue purple, blue white, as well as red white. And then for the total color breakdown, you can see that, obviously blue green and green white are still strong. I'd say those are 2 of the stronger colors that existed in the GD01 meta, and they aren't really going anywhere either. And another thing that I will note too is that at the beginning, if you look at GD01, Japan wasn't really on wing, at least not as much as North American players are on wing until like really the end of GD01. Blue green Zeon Aggro, or just any of the blue green decks, were really just like the by and far most popular deck in Japan. And now it's been kind of switching more to the kind of the green and white wing stuff. So there's a lot of people on blue white. I've also noticed a lot in Japan. There have been a lot more people playing Epyon. We're going to look at some Epyon deck lists as well, but it's interesting to see that. I think that's something where Epyon's not a deck that I'm necessarily on myself. I do feel like it has some issues, but I know, again, a lot of people in Japan are playing it. We're going to look at some red white lists. I have seen people kind of use Qubeley as red white, right? Initially I'm like, all right, red purple or like blue red are kind of the colors for Qubeley in my mind, but it looks like red white's been really kind of the champion for that. And then blue purple, which I think is a really good aggro deck right now. We're going to see some builds for that too, and then just some other colors for it. So if you guys want to check out some individual deck lists, you can again find them on the website, but I do also have timestamps for the decks we're going to look at. And we do have this quick top 16 if you guys want to see it. I don't have all the deck list, and if you guys have any more, let me know. I'll continue to update this if I see more and more being posted on social media too. I won't get like the full top 16 for an event like this though, unfortunately, but I do have a couple of the ones, including the first place for both the blocks. I will say, unfortunately, I didn't get any of the singletons outside of the blue white, so we don't have the red blue, the blue purple, or the red white. Unfortunately, I do want to see some of those deck lists if we can get them, but because wing and Zeon Aggro, we kind of know what these kind of look like a little bit. But we're gonna go through these lists, and then also we're gonna look at some individual deck lists that did well during some of these new type challenges in Japan, and should be a good time. So we're gonna start off with our first place for one of the blocks is gonna be 9-1's version of the blue white freedom blockers. And blue white, I will always say it will never be like the worst color in the game, right? There's just so many good cards that exist that it's difficult for the deck to be bad. Obviously we've seen cards like Gundam and Amuro. These cards have been fantastic. Amuro might be like legitimately the best pilot in the game still, and it's going to be really hard to not have that be the case. So making this a 6-5, being able to have the repair too, you just got like a lot of benefits from this combo in this game. Obviously we have another blocker, Rick Dias, right? Honestly, my opinion of this card has been dropping a little bit in the last couple days, but I think it's still obviously really strong, and if you have a really good late game, this is great. We do have our top end of the the Freedom Gundam. We have L Strike Gundam 2, so the 4 Kiras, and then 2 copies of Justice, just for like another way to get value. Making a 2/2 blocker, but also being able to be a 5/5 body is really nice. And then kind of the new tech add, I would say, is the biological CPU card. So we've got the Forbidden Gundam. This is a blocker that during your turn, this unit cannot receive bow damage from units that are level 2 or lower. So it can only be during your turn that you can, if you block with this, you do still take the damage from it. But this being just an okay blocker, a blocker in blue in general is just kind of worth it. And then we also have the Raider Gundam. Once per turn, when this unit receives effect damage, you get to draw 1 card. So both these are kind of like a little bit specific, but they do get this additional draw, which is really nice. And then also we do have the Orga, Krot, and Shani. So these are the kind of pilots that link with these cards. And then also when linked, if this is a blue unit, you get to choose one enemy unit with blocker and you get to rest it. So, making these like 6/5 that get to block things is really great. Rest things and attack into it. Obviously, half the reason Amuro is really good is because you get that rest. And this just lets you rest anything, right? It's a little bit more particular with what you need to get that rest with, but the fact that also you can put it like in Strike or you can put it in Freedom Gundam just to get the during pair effects for either of these cards means it's not too terrible of a card to have. So other than that, I think that there are some good chances for this. I've seen like Forbidden Gundam, pop up every once in a while, and I think it's not a terrible card either. Honestly, just having a standard blocker in blue, I think also opens up some different deck building for, different other like color combinations, which I think is really, really exciting. So here's a build for Blue White. Congratulations for 9-1 for winning one of these events. And then we also have on the other side, we've got Ryo with their version of the green and white wing. So clearly this deck has been really good in GD01. There hasn't been a lot of ads for it. We've kind of already talked about half of it. It's the Rick Diaz, just another blocker for early game, just to make sure that you get to your late game more consistently is very good. And instead of using the Death Scythe package for this one, we are playing more of the Wu Fei package, which I'm honestly a big fan of. I haven't been like the biggest fan of Death Scythe. I mostly kind of use like more of the Ale Strike package for my personal builds of Wing, right? Like I know that Wing is like a deck that is like pretty standard, but at least there's 3 different builds, right? I would say just there's like the Death Scythe build, which is the more standard build. We've got like the Ale Strike version where we use Hero and Kira, and then we've got this build here, which is use the Chong Wu Fei, and then also using the old Shenlong Gundam. So this card just saying attack, choose 1 unit with blocker that's level 3 or lower and destroy it. It's just a great effect, right? When now there's like twice as many level 3 or lower blockers hanging around, the fact that you can just attack, get rid of Ilfrith or Diaz, and then you can also like, pressure the other one with your Breach 4. That's just like a really, really great effect. And again, like you don't even need a pilot underneath it for this effect, right? You can just have this out, play it on turn 5, and then turn 6 you can play Wing Gundam and then just get some real business going on. So I think it's been a really strong card for those situations. And obviously Wu Fei not only being able to link with this, but being able to just pair with this and make it so you don't take damage from lower cards, which means this survives a little bit longer. And then Heavy Arms, this being able to link with any Operation Meteor trait card means that you can use it with the Shang Wu Fei, make it a 5/5, or with the Hero Yui, you can make it a 6/6, which 6/6 level 4 is like a really good stat line. Aggressively, you can, actively trade with a Gundam without like losing it. Obviously, you can just get like gun tank ping the next turn, but you have to force your opponent to have it. And I really like this build. This is a really cool build with it. We have like our Desert Base, we have Overflowing Affection, Unforeseen Incident, and Striker Pack. And I can definitely see this build being a menace for it. So obviously I know like the builds for Wing, right? It's a little bit boring in the sense that it is kind of like blocker early game and then big kind of hard to interact with card in the late game. But it is cool that there are at least different packages, different ways for people to play this, and I think it's still an accomplishment to get this first place. So Ryo, congratulations for their first place with this Wing 0. Next up, we've got our blue-green Zeon Aggro. So this is Karuta, who was able to get a top 4 with this build here, and I think this was actually a runner-up for the event here. No, the runner-up was another Wing build for it, but regardless, we do have like this pretty much the same thing. I'm not going to spend too much time on this deck, right? It's just really, I think the biggest change is that like they use white base instead of like show of resolve, right? Those 2 are kind of, I guess, moderately interchangeable. They both kind of like draw cards, right? Corsica base does the same thing. I think less people are on Sword Strike Gundam right now, which means Corsica base is a little bit stronger in general. And if you're playing against a deck that just hasn't like, wasn't preparing for aggro, I've seen a lot of Japanese deck lists where they're a little bit more mid-range. I think that is something where, you can still get like these straight effects from, being able to just, I know like this is literally a GD01 deck, but it's still very, very strong. I don't have much more to say. I do think that Zeon Aggro is less good into this format. I do think that people are a little bit more defensive, which makes it difficult for you to be able to press for game as much. But sometimes you see all your shards and your opponent really can't do anything about it. So here's a build from Karudara, and congratulations for their top 4 with their blue and green Zeon Aggro. All right, next up we've got our blue-purple deck. So the rest of these decks are going to be first place builds from new type challenges that happened around Japan. So they're just kind of like better than average decks for sure. Obviously, these events are usually somewhere between like 16 and 32 players. Still an accomplishment for able to get a first place with this, and usually they went 4-0 or 5-0 to get that kind of placement for it. But one thing I have noticed is that one, I did play a lot of blue purple at the end of Star Deck 5 format. We did have not a lot of purple cards for using it, but in this meta, right, we have a little bit more, and it's kind of changed a little bit for especially in like the last week or so. So I would say this is kind of like a more aggressive build. I've seen some builds previously where I call them like Barbatos ping decks, right, where we're kind of like more using like the big boy for suppression to be able to try to get that double damage. But this one's just kind of like lower to the ground and just kind of pushing your advantage when you can. So we're not even playing like the the LR from the Star deck. We're just kind of focusing on our smaller units, right? We do have our Barbatos first form. It's just kind of like our best early game card where we can attack with 5, get rid of a standard base that's not desert base, be able to get a draw 1 as long as we use the Mikazuki to ping it and get that additional advantage there. We are playing 4 copies of Fatal Strike, which I have such an issue with this card where best case, this card goes 1 for 1, right? Worst case, it's stuck in your hand the entire game. I think like in a deck that doesn't draw that much, I'd have a hard time committing to it, but we are playing 2 copies of Showa Resolve, and the fact that this can just get rid of an Ilfrith is not a terrible decision. It does buy you like a lot of time for just getting rid of like a smaller unit quickly. It just kind of feels bad at 4. If I was to play this deck, I would probably think about putting like with Iron and Blood, just for having like another way to ping our Barbatos first form to be able to, you know, get that extra pressure in sometimes. Sometimes you can also like trade when your opponent's not expecting it by having one of your 2 drops. But other than that, I think like I'd still play like 2 to 3 copies of this card, but I think 4 is a little bit much, but it does also have the burst effect, so it's not terrible. It's just I haven't really seen that many builds worth running the full 4 for it. But again, we don't really have much of a top end. This is definitely more of an aggro deck. We've got the Gundam here, and then 4 copies of the Gujion Rebake. This also just lets us be a good like 1 for 1, and then kind of protects our other units because it does have that blocker ability for us. So you guys have probably seen this deck, right? This is probably like a little bit lower to the ground version of like builds that I was playing in Star Deck 5, and I think blue purple is still in a really good spot. And again, any deck that's aggressive that can run Amuro isn't the worst deck in the game, because you can just play out your 1 drops, and then, you know, after that Amuro, go for some damage, and you're usually ahead by quite a bit when you do so. So here's the build here. Congratulations to it is Kagani for their finish with the blue and purple Barbatos aggro. Next up, we've got our red-white decks. We've got 2 of them. We've got TomoharuSaito with their version of like I'd say a Qubeley ping. There's also another deck we're gonna look at in a minute, which I'd call like more of a freedom ping. Clearly, like all these decks, you know like the 2 colors of the deck, and then you kind of have to intuit what you think like the main archetype for some of these decks are. But for this one, we do have like I've been seeing like a lot of people play Qubeley in white and red, which when I was doing like initial testing, like either blue and red, right, because you have all that kind of like cyber new type deck that was already existing, or maybe like purple, just because you're already doing a lot of incidental damage with it too. But most people I've seen with success with running this package is running kind of like the white side of it, just because you do have like these really healthy blockers that helps us get to the late game. Like look how like greedy this late game of this deck is, right? So not only do we have the 4 Kashatra, which I still think that this is like one of the best cards to play on level 5 on curve, is if you have the Merida. The fact that you do get to just get some early removal, the fact that your opponent kind of has to like immediately deal 5 damage to this, because otherwise it can just keep doing damage every turn. All of that is just really, really good for a deck like this one. We're also playing 4 copies of Shinanju, which I do love this pilot, or this unit. I think that the only issue with it is the pilot that you have to pair with it, which can be kind of clunky. Like we're playing 2 copies of full frontal, but we have nothing we can play off of it, right? So I think that's a little bit interesting, but I do also think like a generic +2/+2 is good, especially when we're playing something like Ailstrike Gundam, as well as you can also just put it within the Qubeley. All of these pilots are Neo Zeon, so all of them work with the effect from this, during pair effect. So doing 2 damage to something that's already damaged is great. I think there's a lot of ways to be able to do that, and obviously like Shinanji, the same thing. Like it's if your opponent can interact with this, you're kind of upset, but if you can't, like just being able to get a high maneuver off the pair with it is really good. And the 7/6 body is pretty terrifying. And then obviously like the 7/6 body that you get from the Haman Karn as well is really, really good. Sorry, yeah, and you can make this a 7/7 if you have the full frontal in it. But This is a really interesting build. The fact that you can go like really like high with like your blockers. You have a lot of units that have like a lot of above health than usual, and I think it's a really cool build. I have to definitely try this myself because I do want to play some Qubeley, and I think like this red white build could be like the cool way to do so. Because I've been playing it with like red blue and red purple, but I haven't tried red white, and I've been really interested in doing so. So here's a build from Tomoharu, and congratulations for their first place with the. I would say this is Qubeley ping, and then we also what I'd say like is a freedom ping, right? So we're playing red white, which with the freedom package is kind of supposed to go with justice, right, based on GD01 cards. But again, you'll see like it's kind of like the same thing as like the previous deck, but there is a big difference on what our top end is, right? So instead of running like the Hammond for a little bit more ping damage and a little bit of more effect damage from there, we're instead of playing freedom with the Kira as well as like the Merida crew still in the full frontal, right? So because of this, like the Kira doesn't get the effect of like the pair with the Kshatriya, but everything else you get to use, which is really really nice. We do have a couple more effect or damage commands. So we're playing 4 copies of Close Combat and 2 copies of Battle Vases, which is a lot. That's 6 cards that deal 2 damage or more. So you do have to like, but that does get like a lot of clears and a lot of damage, which is really nice. Again, we have all these units with higher than average life totals with our blockers. We've got our Shinanji, which again, we can't play anything off the full frontal off of it, but that's still fine. And then yeah, Freedom Gundam late game is like, it's really tough to interact with this cleanly. It just gets so much good trade potential, especially if you have Kira underneath it. You just get to the late game really, really healthy. So I think this is really interesting too. I definitely want to try the Qubeley build just because like I want to use the new cards with it, but I do think that this is also another build, and it's been cool to see like red white pop up as like a different deck. This was definitely not something I was expecting as much as it was from this meta. So here's the build here. Congratulations to pallllaq for their finish with the red white. So we've got a couple more decks. We're going to go into kind of the blue white deck. So we've got Haga with their version of the Epyon blockers. And again, like I've been looking at like a lot of deck lists on Twitter, seeing what Japanese players are playing, and a lot of people are hyping up Epyon. And I also know like sincerely, like I get it. He's a cool card. He's like I know he's like a fan favorite Gundam as well, right? So like there's reasons for people to want to play this deck outside of the effect itself. So I get it from that side. And I do think like it can get a lot of benefits, right? So during Link, being able to attack more than once, being able to like, best case scenario, Epyon, and then you use Zex Marquise, and then you get to attack. You get to trade with 2 things, and you get to draw 2 cards, right? Because Zex Marquise's during pair is not a once per turn, so you get that additional draw. So all that like makes sense, like why people would want to be playing this. My issue with the deck is that I feel like it's just such an important combo that if you do not see it, you're in such a bad spot. So like Epyon doesn't really do anything unless you have Zex Marquise, which, by level 8, you would expect to see probably 1 or 2. But the other thing is that, like, it's really tough to be able to, attack with Epyon and keep it around, especially since, like, I'm surprised we're not playing Unforeseen Incident in this deck. I feel like that's a way to be able to potentially keep your Epyon to attack twice and to be able to survive, because without it, like, you're just kind of in a weird spot. So the other thing to mention is that, like, we are playing a little bit of the Earth Alliance, the biological CPU cards, so Forbidden Gundam and the Raider Gundam as well, again with the Orga, Krot, and Shani here. Like this honestly is like very similar to like just an Epyon build of like the first place list that we looked at the beginning of the day, right? Swapping out the freedom stuff for more of like the Epyon stuff. So I think that's still fine. That's like a different way to play it. It still have, you have like the trade-off of like less defense necessarily, but more aggression on the top end, and you do get more cycle because this being able to get that draw is really nice. So I just feel like it's just tough to be able to get this. It reminds me a lot of like Unicorn too, where like Unicorn can like win you the game if you see your pieces, but if you don't see your pieces, this card just feels so bad, right? This card without Zex is like, I would say almost dead in hand, which is tough in a deck that does get some draw, but like seeing your Zex is a little bit, hopeful sometimes. I do think that there are some times where you can like use Zex for, being able to get generic effects, but if you're not playing like Ale Strike, it's a little bit tougher to get that as well. So we are also playing the Naval Bombardment. I've been seeing this card pop up every once in a while. The fact that you do get like the AP +3 is nice, so you get to block and trade with something that your opponent probably wasn't expecting. but it's still not my favorite. I'd almost always play over Unforeseen instead. I'd rather keep my bodies alive than like do an aggressive 2-for-1 trade with naval bombardment. So it can have like a really important burst, but it's the same burst as like Unforeseen, so I think that's fine. I do like the Dominion for the heal, though it only heals blue units, so you don't get to heal your blockers, which is why I've been playing like side 7 a lot of the time. And this is my personal cope. You guys can ignore this next part, but I don't like if you're playing like a deck like this, like top end. I think like Epyon's fine, but I've been finding just a lot more success with Psycho Gundam instead. Like it's just like the same kind of idea, but it's a little bit lower to the ground, and it's not like at least Psycho Gundam like. At least you get Breach 3 if you don't have your unit, and you get some benefits from there. And I think like the 4 is just like a better pilot generically. It's essentially the same effect, but you get to link with better units, I think, earlier game, and you get like easier ways to like get the effects from it. And I find that's like my biggest issue with like a build like this. I'd feel like I'm like a little bit more partial to like playing the Psycho Gundam stuff, but I think like Epyon's still good. I think like I feel like people are like forcing this to be in the meta a little bit, but when this deck goes off, it's really great. It just reminds me of like Unicorn, where you need to find like the pilot pair, and whenever you don't get to see that, it just feels tough. But the other issue is that you have to get to level 8, which sometimes is really hard to do, and still be in a good position for it. But here's a build here from Hoggett. Congratulations for their finish with blue-white Epyon blockers. And then we also do have like I would say I've been calling this like freedom. Like have been some builds where they're kind of like L strike tempo. Like again, blue-white is just so generically good. It's really hard to like pinpoint archetypes within this color combination. But I would say that this is freedom with a kind of academy focus, like engine kind of thing, right? There's not like that much academy stuff, but we do have like the old reliable aerial, which I think this card's like always going to be just okay, right? Sometimes it's going to be too slow, but just like being able to draw one of a command where blue and white have, I will say, like the best commands in the game, I think, on average, right? Like Overflowing, Unforeseen, Show Resolve, Striker Pack, fantastic cards, right? All by themselves. Being able to get like another activation of one of those is really great. And we also have the new Gundam aerial rebuild, right? So this having high maneuver just generically is good. The fact that you also get to be a blocker, it is like a little bit tough that you have to put a pilot underneath it to get the blocker. Like the chances for this to be blocker is a little bit high compared to like Freedom Gundam, where you're just a blocker forever. But I think it's like not too terrible, and you do, getting 4 cards that are commands in your trash is not too tough when we are playing 11. So I think this has been a build. I think a lot of people have been splashing Academy for their blue whites just because the aerial can be like a really good closer, and it's been cool to see that as well. Not much more to say, but here is the build here from Kaicho from the blue white Freedom. And then to wrap it up, we've got Cardbox Kochi with their build of like this blue red Aegis Aggro. This is just a really neat deck in my mind. It did get a first place, and it does kind of remind me of like a low to the ground like blue red Cyber new type. There's not that many cards, but I do think like one thing I've noticed is that Aegis Gundam is like a little bit better than usual, I think, in GD02 meta compared to GD01. GD01 with blue green running around as much as it was. Aegis Gundam just like, there are so many units that weren't, or so many decks that weren't playing a level 5 or higher. So with this current meta, I think there's a lot more decks playing like Ale Strikes, are being able to play like cards that are in range for this Aegis Gundam. Dealing 3 damage to them is a lot of damage. It's a lot of damage that you get that benefit from. So I think that is something that's important that people need to respect. I have seen like some red-white builds where also playing like Aegis, because again, doing 3 damage and then like being able to play Qubeley on the next turn does get like a lot of good clears for a lot of good cards. So I don't have much more to say about like this one, right? Like again, like this is an aggro deck where we're playing Gundam and Amuro, right? It can't be a bad deck. You will win just off that by itself. But I have enjoyed, like, 4-drop Aegis is also just a very great card for getting some early momentum. The fact that you have that Breach 3, you get to clear something at a 4-6. You can trade with an Ilfrith, become a 4-4 body, and get the Breach 3. All of that's just really, really good in my mind. And I think there's a lot of potential for that to be, very strong in the future. So we'll see what kind of, if there's like some other kind of more unique color combinations that continue to pop up with it. Again, it's been pretty clear that, blue and blue-green, green-white, and blue-white are still like really present, almost 75% of this meta. But I do think like purple is still like a little bit unexplored. There are some chances. Red-white has been getting some really good finishes here, and it's been cool to see what this meta has been kind of adapting shifting over the last couple weeks, and this is just people in Japan, right? Again, I do think like different regions will change their meta depending on like their own regions are looking like and how they play, and North America meta doesn't have to immediately reflect this either, which is cool. So not much more for me. Thank you guys so much for watching. I do appreciate it. If there's any decks that we didn't go over that you guys think can do well, let me know in the comments below, and we'll catch you all next time.